Welcome everyone. We had a long break through the holidays. It's great to be back. I'm your host Janine Escalier-Cato, and this is Staging the Third Act. As you know, this is a show by, about, and for baby boomers who do not have children or grandchildren. So we leave our legacies to the universe, our creative legacies. And I'm excited about our guest today, Frank Nissen, who is president of Gold Country Writers in Auburn, and he's also been a cartoonist for Disney, and he's made several Disney movies, so that's really exciting to have him here today to share his history, his background, and how he made it in the world of art. And he's going to share this trek, his life, and he's going to leave some parting wisdom to young artists who are up and coming. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Frank Nissen. Hi, Frank.
Good morning, Janine.
Thank you for being here. And when we talked before the show, you said you wanted to start the show off with a couple things that happened to you that set you on your career.
All right. It's hard to know when you actually get on a path. Usually it starts very young. And I'm sure I was drawing before this, but the first real instance that came that maybe something a little special was going on was in the first grade. The school had a parent-teacher night where the parents would come and talk to the teacher and get a sense of how their child was doing in class and stuff. And prior to that, the teacher had given the kids in the class an assignment to draw a house. That was the assignment. And almost all the kids drew the standard little peak roof on the side of a hill with the chimney and the smoke and clouds and the sun and all the usual stuff, right? And that was fine. And then the evening of the parent-teacher night came along, and the teacher came up to my parents, and she held up the drawing that I had done, and she said, "Is this your house?" And they said yes. And I had apparently done a fairly faithful rendition of the east elevation of our house out on Shore Track, which is here in Auburn, or was in Auburn. So that was kind of, everybody kind of took notice of that in some way or another.
Was it 3D?
Oh no, it wasn't. It was an elevation.
Okay.
I wasn't that far along. So that was kind of the first sign, and fortunately, my parents were very happy to indulge me as long as I had a piece of paper and a pencil in front of me. I was happy, so I wasn't hard to please. And the next thing that kind of really lit the fire, as it were, was in high school, in an English class, interestingly enough. One day the teacher brought in a couple of pictures. Now I don't remember what those pictures were in aid of, you know, whether it was a book we were working on or some other reason. But anyway, there were these two pictures. And they were small, they weren't all that big. And many, many years later, I realized that he had clipped them out of a book, which was, you know, I was innocent of then, but horrified later. Anyway, he set them up on the chalkboard at the end of the room. And I went over and looked at them, and I was just almost like lightning had struck. I looked at these two pictures, and I said, I want to do that.
Wow.
I want to do that. I had no idea what I was looking at. I mean, I knew that it was a picture of a bunch of archers around a tree. That was one image. The other image was a mountain man, a trapper in the forest, in a clearing in the forest. And it was quite dramatically lit, as I remember. And I had no, you know, I had no vocabulary. I had no tools with which to say why I liked the pictures. You know, I didn't know anything about color. I didn't know anything about composition or drawing or draftsmanship or anything, lighting. It's just that these two pictures just sort of dove into me and wouldn't let go. Many years later, I learned that they were by a man named N.C. Wyeth, who was a very early American illustrator. And they were...
Andrew Wyeth? Andrew Wyeth?
No, N.C. Wyeth.
Okay.
He was the father to Andrew Wyeth.
Oh, wow.
And the picture of the mountain man was from The Last of the Mohicans.
Wow.
And the other picture was from Robin Hood.
Huh.
Two classics of which N.C. Wyeth was commissioned to illustrate back in the early part of the 1900s. And of course later I learned what color and composition and draftsmanship and all those things, all those elements made up that image and its drama and its power and its beauty and everything else. And the rest of my career, that happened again and again. I would be going along thinking I was doing all right and having some fun and whatever, and then somebody else would come into the studio and I would say, oh my goodness, I've been sitting on my butt. I gotta get going here. Look at this person, this is amazing art. And I just, I'd have to sort of shift into high gear again, being inspired.
And along the way in your journey, we talked about this, what, at the points where you were hired, what made the difference of you? Maybe you didn't feel you were the best, but what was it about you getting hired? What you told me, the characteristics that you had that got you in the door.
Well, I would say, I think I know the story you're talking about. That's kind of a down the road thing. I think the good thing that happened at a crucial stage was my parents said, okay, if you want to be an artist, you got to make a living. We're not gonna have you sponging off us for the next 30 years. We're not gonna have you starving in a garret. If you want to be an artist, you want to get training so that you can make a living. And that happened to be a school in Los Angeles, which was an excellent school called Art Center College of Design. And it just taught me all the basics. I mean, things like perspective, which you hardly ever think about when you talk about art school. But they taught how to use and understand color, and they taught you how to draw better and all kinds of stuff like that. But I think the real door opener, if you will, was being willing to do anything.
Aha.
I had disability. I could draw. That was my tool. I could draw. But the other important, I think, ingredient was I was willing to draw anything.
Ah.
Right? We had this great school teacher in grammar school who had this sort of drawing exhibition every year. And it was, interestingly enough, it was outside. This was in Auburn. And it would be like Art Day in Auburn or some civic thing like that. And she would drag all her best pupils out onto the sidewalk with their easels, and we were supposed to draw, right? But most kids, the typical artistic kind of sensibility is, I'm waiting for my muse, what do I draw, and, they would have to sit there and think or whatever. I didn't have to do that. I just would start drawing. Now, I didn't draw what I was supposed to draw. I would draw pirates and sailing ships and mermaids, and I just drew whatever I wanted to draw. And I think the teacher always had me there, not necessarily because I was the best artist, but because I could produce. I didn't have to be, I didn't have to be coddled along. She said, she said, okay, draw. I drew, right? And that kind of really, I think, was a good starting point for life in commercial art, which
There
is
you
what
go.
I was.
There
Right?
you
I was a commercial artist. You know, somebody comes in and says, okay, I need a barn drawing by tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
You know, people would, oh, you know, no, you just, you know, if you need some research, you go do some research and you draw the barn, you know. So, but the survival mechanism, if you will, came or was illustrated to me much, much later. I went to Canada to work for many years. And when I went, I had almost nothing to offer except the ability to draw. And I had done a little bit of experimentation in animation and stuff. But when I went to Canada, I got hired by a small animation house and proceeded to learn the craft, basically. I mean, I had had a little training in art school, but you know, that's only the theoretical stuff. The real, you know, meat and potatoes learning comes on the job, and you have to solve problems. I mean, for instance, when I was hired by this gentleman, I had never done lip sync in animation. And lip sync is a whole minutia thing about animation that I will not bore you with.
Putting voice to the lips.
Well, it's how you have a soundtrack with the voice, and then you have to make you have to draw the lips in such a way that the illusion is created that the character is talking.
Yeah.
And when it happens, it's quite magical, but it takes a while. Anyway, so he gave me a couple of beginning assignments, kind of warmed me up, but the first real job of my own that he gave me was I don't know, cornflakes, some kind of cereal. And the spokes character for this cereal was a bird. Not only was the character a bird, the character had a bent beak. And so my first lip sync job was to make a bird with a stiff beak talk.
Oh, wow.
No teeth, no tongue, no movable lips. Right? How do you make a bird
Wop, 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 wop.
I don't even remember what I did, but anyway, that first 5 years was amazing. I learned so much.
Did you fall
On
in
the
love
job.
with animation at that point?
I was in love with animation all the way along. I mean, here's the thing. All through high school, the art teacher, a very patient man, the art teacher had tried to get me to do everything.
No.
Silk screening, printmaking, pottery, sculpture, and anytime I got my hands dirty, I'd say, just give me some paper and a pencil and leave me alone.
You
I'm
were
happy.
a plastic
I draw.
artist.
Let me draw.
That's what they call plastic arts.
All this, dry point. To this day, I don't really understand dry point, but it's a very specialized printmaking technique, which involves rinsing and chemicals and etching, and you have to draw that thing backwards so that it comes out the way you want it on the front ways and all that. I just leave me draw. I'm happy. What was my point?
About animation. When you...
So I won't go into all that gory detail, but the art school that I was at taught a film course, and they said you can either do a live action film or an animated film. And it was like a 90-degree turn in my life. I just thought, that's interesting. I'll go try that.
Okay.
Right? Now the difference was that when I ran into a snag in animation, I didn't throw up my hands and walk away. I said, ooh, I gotta do this. I gotta find this. I gotta work this out. I gotta make this work. I'm not gonna let this go until I figure it out. Now I had a lot of help along the way, but that was the difference.
Wow.
That was the difference. That each thing I did And it was magical. I mean, you remember, you've done those little flip book things.
Sure.
You can buy those little tiny flip books and go,
Right.
and you have the impression that you have when you actually do a bunch of drawings and film them and see it on the screen is like 100 times better.
Oh, I can imagine. So
Yeah.
I'm sure the viewers want to know how you eventually got in with Disney.
I answered a cattle call.
Oh,
Disney had made, this is 1996, it was the mid-90s.
wow.
Disney had, a couple of years before, had made Lion King. And they said, wow, let's make a Lion King every year. Well, they should have known better, but you don't make a Lion King every year. You make a Lion King once every 10 years if you're lucky. Right? So they were all hopped up to crank out all these blockbuster animation movies every year. So they scoured the world. If you could breathe and hold a pencil, you got hired. Right? And everybody was doing it. I mean, Paramount was doing it, Universal was doing it, Disney was doing it, DreamWorks was doing it. Everybody was scarfing up anybody in animation who was willing to move to LA, of course. And I had a friend who was at Disney, and he said, hey, they're coming to town to interview, you ought to go. That was in Toronto. I was in Toronto at the time. And so I, pulled together my portfolio and went down to see him, and through a very long, arduous, bureaucratically infused process, I got hired.
Wow.
And one of the most interesting and persistent things was, wow, you worked for Disney. Yes, I did.
Well, I'm impressed.
Well, yeah, but you have to be on your toes. You cannot sit still, because there's at least half a dozen people in that studio who are better than you. And you have to crank out. I mean, I remember there were movies that I worked on where I had to I did storyboarding, which is part of the process. And I had to sometimes redo a sequence that I was working on 4 or 5 times, right? And it was because things would change in the story or in the movie, because it's you do little pieces. And, you might do this piece and everybody say, hey, that's great, it really looks good. But 6 weeks later, somebody else is doing this piece and they come up with a really cool idea to make that part of the story better, but oops, wait a minute, when you do that, you gotta go back and fix it.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Has to flow.
Yeah,
Has to
and
match.
because, animation takes a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Way longer than the normal live action.
I went with a film major in college, and he did cartoons with dolls.
Mm-hmm.
And
So stop motion.
stop motion. And he took a Barbie doll and he'd take a picture of the hand going boop, and then another picture, boop.
Yep.
And I thought, how many hours is this going to take for you to do like 2 minutes of a film? It was unbelievable.
Yes, I know, it's huge. And drawing is almost the same.
Yeah.
Drawing, you are doing, on each piece of paper, you are doing each of those little movements, right? Now, you as the animator don't do that. You, as an animator, a key animator, you might do drawing 1, drawing 5, drawing 10, and drawing 15. But you, as the animator, you are designing the path of movement.
Wow.
You say the arm has to do this,
Right.
not this. Or not
So
this.
you have to draw that.
Well, yeah. First you have to think about it. You have to decide, what does the character have to do in that scene? Movement.
Yeah.
What kind of movement is in that scene? And once you figure that out, then you have to do all the drawings, right? And you have to again, you have to have the drawing skill.
Right.
To, what's the difference between, of the expression?
Yeah.
Okay, what's the expression? What's the difference between being peeved and angry?
Wow. And you have to show all the nuances in the face, right?
You have to know what to do with the eyebrows. You have to know what to do with the eyes. You have to know what to do with the posture.
I
had a very interesting experience. As an animator, you're always thinking about movement. You're always thinking about how can I have this character move interestingly. We were working on this movie. Again, this was in Toronto, and we were working on this movie that had a kind of there were teenage protagonists, okay, and the hero protagonist had to be this kind of truculent, chip on his shoulder kind of guy, right? And I was co-directing at the time, and I was going to be animating the villain because he wasn't in the picture all that much. And this other very, very good animator was assigned to do the hero, right? And so we did a couple of pieces of test animation, and we had a contact in Hollywood that was giving us advice. And so we sent out a piece of test animation, and we got the word back, he's moving too much. I think, how can it be? He's supposed to move. I mean, that's what I'm an animator for. I make him move, right? And so we talked a little bit, and the advisor said, he's just going to be, he's not a guy who's very demonstrative. He's always kind of like this, right? And so the animator tried another bit, and we sent it down and said, he's still moving too much. So the producer came to me and said, you're going to have a go at this, see what we can do. And I said, okay. And so I did a piece of test animation, and we sent it down. He's still moving too much.
Wow, what do you want?
So
Just stand there?
we were about at the end of our rope, right? We just didn't know what to do. So finally, we had the story laid out enough that I said, let's try this scene here. And it's where the hero and his friends go and visit bad guy in his big mansion on the hill, right? And the hero, as the storyboard shows it, the hero sort of slouches into the house, and he's really, he's not going to be impressed at all. And he saunters into the living room, and he plops himself down on the couch, puts his feet up on the coffee table, and he's just lounging there like, show me, right? And the only thing I had as movement was he was doing this with his foot.
Oh, that's cool.
He was doing this, and it shows he's impatient. It
shows everything.
It shows everything, right? So we sent it down, and the advisor said, "That's it. That's him."
Isn't it funny how you can reduce it down to one little movement?
Oh, I know, and if it's the right movement,
wow,
you're there.
All that you have to go through to find that is amazing.
Well, yeah. But I mean, that happened all the time. I mean, one time I was animating a commercial, and it required the character to put on a coat. And I struggled and I struggled and I struggled all morning trying different, just trying different drawings. How do you put on a coat? And then I thought, well, dummy, you got a coat hanging over there. Go put it on and see what you do. So I went and got a coat, and I realized there's this whole thing. You have to lean a certain way. You put your arm back in the right hand first, and there's a choreography to putting on a jacket, right? And that is true of virtually anything.
Yeah,
you do.
absolutely.
Even I did a commercial with a candle. Tell me if we're ranting on here too much.
No.
I did a commercial that had a candle in it, and the candle flame, it was a commercial about energy conservation, way before its time. And so the commercial was talking about, you know, all the electricity we use in cities and how much fuel an airplane takes and all these different things. And so the flame would turn into that for like, you know, half a second, you know, an airplane or a house or a cityscape or whatever, just, you know, like kind of surreal stuff. So that's fine, and we're all set to go, and I draw the candle, and I draw the typical flame, which is the little teardrop thing at the end of the wick, right? Everybody's happy, and I can't, you know, how do I move that? It can't just do this, you know, everybody's gonna know it's fake, right? So I was really in a quandary, and I said, okay, I gotta do some research. And I went to the editor, who is a good friend, and I asked him to help me shoot some footage of a candle. A candle flame never takes the teardrop shape.
Huh.
And this is 24 frames a second, right? This is a stretch of 35 millimeter film about like this, right? With all the frames.
Yeah.
And not one of them was this shape.
Interesting.
They were everything. There was, or it'd be here for one frame, and then it'd be over there for another frame,
wow.
And then it'd be a little blob for a third frame, and the fourth frame it would be up like this and whatever. It just all over the place.
Interesting.
Right? And that, of course, was wonderful because that meant I could turn it into an airplane really easily.
Wow.
Because I could do any shape I wanted over here, and as long as I sort of kept the movement right,
interesting.
You know, it worked. So,
wow.
You know, I mean, and that's part of what kept animation interesting for 40 years was that I was always learning something.
Yeah.
I was always trying out new things.
It's scientific. It's
yeah.
Animation is scientific.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Anyway,
wow.
It's
I could listen to this. I could listen to this forever because people don't think of these things when they see cartoons. They don't see all the work that's behind it.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, I know. I just
wow.
You have to, you know, especially with animation. With live action, you build the set, you hire the actors, they learn the script, you turn on the lights, you turn on the camera, and you go, right?
Yeah.
With animation, it all starts with drawings. What's the castle gonna look like? What's the heroine gonna look like? What's she gonna wear?
Oh.
What kind of hair is she gonna have? You know,
now that you're retired, how do you fill that creative void in your life? I mean, that's so. Tell us about that.
I write.
Tell us about your book.
Well, I was writing early on, and I wrote a little bit in the film work. There was occasion to contribute bits of writing here and there, but I decided to write.
You can hold it to the camera.
Okay.
And show and tell us a little bit because I know it's getting a lot of traction.
Well, it's a historical novel, which was a kind of a natural since I grew up in the gold rush country and really love it to this day.
It's called Fortune's Call.
You know, I very soon realized that words and pictures sort of do the same thing,
mm-hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
With a picture, you process it more instinctively,
mm-hmm.
let's say, right? I mean, if it's a drawing of a tree, and it sort of looks like a tree, then you just say tree, because you know what a tree looks like, you've had experience looking at trees, and you can say tree, right? But if I write the word tree,
you don't know what it is.
What kind of tree is it? Is it a sequoia? Is it an aspen? Is it a willow? Is it an oak?
And what does it look like?
So yeah, and is it tall and majestic? Is it willowy and whatever?
Feathery? Is it?
Yeah, is it feathery?
Spiky?
Is it the rain dripping? And so, the writing process became the same creative exercise
Sure.
as drawing was, because
Sure.
you have to select, in a drawing you're selecting where the line goes. In writing you're selecting which word goes in front of that word and which word goes after that word.
And when I write, I literally make pictures in my mind. I make the pictures, and I love the process of editing. Where I'll go back, I'll walk away, go back, and I'll look and I'll go, no, how can I embellish that? How can I really make the reader see it? And you're right, it's another form of making pictures.
Yeah.
And it's another form of creating that
That's right.
movement.
That's right.
And I've also heard that, you've read a lot of, I know you've been at various meetings and you've read a lot of sections of your book, and I hear it's doing pretty well.
It's doing pretty well, yes.
And everyone has been raving about it, and you are a very good writer. You're a wordsmith. As you can tell through this interview, he knows how to use words. And it is a history of this area. And
To a
it's a
degree,
story,
yes,
right?
yes,
It's
yes,
a fictional
It's
story.
a fiction story, but it's based in the realities of the gold rush.
Right.
I just wanted it to be a really good adventure story.
Yeah.
I was sort of, how to say it, not inspired. I was approached by a friend who said, there haven't been very many fiction books, especially for young people, and this started out as a young person's novel. There haven't been very many stories about the gold rush.
Yeah, no.
And since I was starting out as a young adult thing, I thought, well, there's too much stuff around where the protagonist is a, grumpy, chip on his shoulder, neurotic, whatever. And I thought, I don't want to do that. And I went back to Treasure Island and thought about Jim, the character in Treasure Island. And I thought, that's the kind of character I would want to spend time with. Yeah. So I built the story around Treasure Island, which is the bad guy is kind of a Long John Silver type character. Peg, the main character in the book, is very much modeled on Jim in Treasure Island.
You can't go wrong with the classics.
No.
Well, we're running out of time, and I want you to say a couple things to the young artists that are up and coming today. And I know that I just think it's important for them to know your take on becoming an artist. And you said two things that I think are really important for our viewers to hear. Two things that you would say to young up and coming artists today.
Well, can I add one?
Sure.
Keep drawing. That's the most important thing you can do, and even more, copy the people you like, especially if you're young. I mean, I was drawing from Mad Magazine when I was in grade school because I really loved the artists that were drawing stuff in Mad Magazine. So you find people that you really, really get excited about and copy them. Because when you copy them, you learn how they do things. And that leads into the one that is my sort of trick question whenever I'm asked to talk to young people about their art. And my first question is, would you rather eat than draw? Which would you rather do, eat or draw? And if you say eat, well then, draw as long as you want to, but don't worry about it if you kiss her goodbye. If you say, I'd rather draw than eat, keep going. Just keep going.
And you also said, don't let them tell you can't make a living as an artist.
Amen. Oh.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
Yeah, there's tons of ways. There's not as many as there used to be, but there are still very satisfying careers out there. Mm-hmm. But you have to, this is the thing. Most people, when they say art, they kind of think of fine artists, right? And we have this very stereotypical thing about what a fine artist is supposed to be. The kind of art I'm talking about is commercial art. And that means drawing what somebody else needs. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, in our culture, people who do that are not necessarily thought of as artists. Hmm. So if you've got that definition of an artist, then probably what I have to say really doesn't mean very much. I have never ever regretted working in a field that serves other people's needs, because that's what commercial art is.
Oh, okay.
Right? Commercial art is you are offering your creative, artistic abilities to help somebody else do something.
Sell something, like an ad?
Mostly sell something, but illustrate books.
Okay.
Or in this day and age, design a video game.
Okay.
But it's basically, you have to draw what the game needs, not what you want.
Okay.
And that's the big mindset that you have to do. But anyway, I, just for the sake of wrapping it up, I have been drawing since before I could walk.
Oh, wow.
And to this day, I enjoy it as much as I did then.
Wow.
When I sit down to a blank piece of paper, I have an idea in mind, but I don't really know how it's going to turn out. But I want to find out. And that's all you need.
Yeah. Did your parents encourage that before you were walking? Did they know, and did they feel that you had that natural?
Well, they knew that I was scribbling, but when you're 3 years old, you're not producing anything really recognizable. Uh-huh. But yeah, they did everything they could to keep me in paper and pencils.
Yeah.
And that's all I needed.
Yeah. Well, we're kind of at the end. Is there anything you want to say to the viewers? Tell the viewers how they can get a copy of your book.
I'm sorry?
Tell the viewers how they can get a copy of your book.
Well, you can
I'll move this
order them on Amazon. It's available on Amazon. If you do read the book, and whether you enjoy it or not, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review on Amazon.
Very good.
Because that's the way the publishing world works these days. But I do hope you enjoy it. And it was great fun to write it, and I hope it'll be great fun for you to read it.
And you are on a second one, right?
I'm working on book 2. It's part of a trilogy.
Oh, good.
I know what's going to happen in book 2, but I have no idea what he's going to run into in book 3.
I'd like to say to the viewers, I love this show. I love the people that I meet. I have actually met some good friends through this show, and I want to put an all call out there. If you are a baby boomer, and that's traditionally born between the years 1945 and 1965, please contact me via the station, YouTube, or Auburn Community Television. I would love to have you as a guest, but the caveat is you have to be what we call solo agers, and that means that you did not have the privilege of having your own children for whatever reason, and mine was that I couldn't. And I was a teacher for 36 years, so I had wonderful children all my career. Mm-hmm. And I have friends who have children that I love. It's just, drop a line through YouTube, drop a line through the station, and I'd love to have you as a guest because I'm always in search of great people to have on this show. And thank you for watching, as usual. And I'd like to thank Frank for being here.
Yes, ma'am.
And I want to keep this show going, so if you're interested in being a guest, please let me know. And this, again, Janine Escalera-Cato, and this is Staging the Third Act.